Contingencies, what are they? And should you be afraid of them? Are they going to help you or hurt you in a negotiation? That's our talking point today in this episode of The Den. Stay tuned. The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show dedicated to exploring hot topics in real estate, local happenings, and industry trends. We're a small team of professionals approaching $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 local transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Today, we're going to be talking about contingencies. Contingencies, there's all kinds of contingencies in real estate, but specifically, we're going to be talking about contingencies to buy and sell, buy-sell contingency. We'll get to more of the details, but before we do that, I'm going to introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lyons Group. To my left, Paul, hand me the rock, Barry, Melissa, let's go, Glasgow, Aspen, the Ninja Gruen, and Shannon, the boss, Martin Martinez. My name is Ben, and I am your host of The Den. So welcome to today's episode. Contingencies. We've had a lot of questions about that over the years, and there's a lot of ways to attack a contingency. There's some things as a buyer you should be aware of, and obviously as a seller, but they come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And I think we should really kind of dive into what a buy-sell contingency is, and also what are some of the other contingencies that you may face in a real estate transaction. So, Melissa, do you want to kick us off on some thoughts on a buy-sell contingency?
Absolutely.
Thoughts?
Most people have to maybe do that because they're going to go from one house to another and they don't want to move into a rental in between. So what we can do is we can make an offer on a new property contingent of their current property closing and funding. And it's really, it's out there. Everybody has to do it. It's just better if you can do that when your property is already under contract. It makes it so much stronger for that seller to take their property off the market and wait for you to close.
Yes. And so there's different stages in that contingency, right? So if you make an offer, let's say you're looking to buy a home and you can't buy that home until you sell your home, right? That's what we're talking about specifically. Well, what stage are you at with your home? Have you even got it ready to go? I mean, have you got it clean and ready to go to market? Have you talked to a realtor? Are you ready to go to market if your offer gets accepted? So those are some of the things to consider. Aspen, share us some thoughts on a contingency from a buyer's standpoint, what they should know about getting their home ready, and how it may affect their ability to negotiate.
So you're asking like if they're making the offer contingent upon the sale of their house?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it's kind of a little bit of a waste of time to even submit an offer if your house is not at least ready to go like the next day, pretty much. So you've had all the paperwork signed, it's cleaned, pictures are taken, any pre-inspections you're doing are done, and you're ready to go, because otherwise, let's say they get another offer and then you're scrambling to get all of this done within a really short period of time. So I think if you're going to be submitting offers on a property and you have to sell your home first, you really need to be at that ready to go stage, if not already under contract, preferably. By the time you go to sell it, or by the time you put the offer in.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think that's a great point. Now, you said something interesting there, which said, because the seller may entertain other offers. Now we're talking about a contingency offer with a first right of refusal. Paul, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
If a seller accepts an offer from a buyer with a contingency for them to sell, they still market the property as pending, but with a first right of refusal. And what that means is if they get another offer during that time period, the buyer that's under contract with them, they give them usually 72 hours. And I think that number is a fillable number in the form. So it could be 48, 72,
totally
whatever
negotiable. Yeah.
But during that time, and this is where it gets a little sticky. Some people think that you need to have it sold by then or just under contract by then. So what we have on the form is either a waiver or a satisfaction of the contingency. So you have 72 hours to either tell the seller, I'm going to buy your house without selling mine, or my house is under contract and it is scheduled to close. So that's the first right of refusal. If they cannot meet those requirements, either the waiver or the satisfaction, then the other offer can take their place. and go into contract.
Can move into first position. Yes. And so that's an important point because the seller is going to continue to market their home while you're trying to sell your property. And they're basically giving you an opportunity. You're in first position that, hey, we've received an acceptable second offer and we want to move forward with them. However, you need to remove your contingency and move forward and purchase, or back away and let this other buyer move into position. So Shannon, as a buyer's broker, what do you need to tell your buyers in regard to negotiations and how that may put them at a disadvantage? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think that when you're coming in and you're going to ask a seller for a contingency for sale, you want them to, wait for you to sell your house or at least give them a first option on it. First of all, come in and make your offer strong, because you're already asking something of that seller. And a lot of people maybe don't understand. From the person asking for the contingency, it seems like a small thing. But for the person who has their house on the market, that's a really big thing, for them to consider. And so, try to make your offer the best that you can. Try to make your offer strong. So they say, oh, I'll wait maybe a little bit longer to get this sold. So you can do that if, because the terms are favorable for me. Also know that you need to be pretty ready on your side, like Aspen said, ready to go. But you also need to be pretty ready when you have a buyer to, I'm not saying you need to do everything they want, but be a little more flexible. Now's not the time to play hardball. If you're talking about, $1,000 repairs to keep your buyer happy so that you can move on to the one that you want to purchase, consider doing that, because that's going to be one of the biggest problems I find. People really want to get in there and they want to play hardball with their buyer, but you got another one waiting over here, and anybody can walk in at any time. And if you're not ready to perform, you're going to lose that house that you want. And you probably at that point would be willing to do a little bit more. So just be prepared to do a little bit more. Just be prepared to be a little more flexible.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I mean, the flexibility component, when you have a buyer lined up on your home, you're trying to buy a home. Of course, there's time frames that you got to play with, moving in and out, maybe a pre-occupancy, a post-occupancy.
Yeah, so be open to all of that.
Yeah, be open to all of that. Let me ask this, and this is a question for anybody. How much, this is two questions. First and foremost, does it harm a seller to accept a contingency right out of the gate? It's a new listing and they've get some offers in, or maybe one offer, it's a contingency. Should they consider accepting an offer contingent right out of the gate? And the second question is, I don't remember, it just jumped out of my head. So let's start with the first one. How about that? Does it harm a seller to accept a contingency right out of the gate?
I think I'm rubbing off on you.
I know.
I'll take that one.
Yep.
I think it depends on the seller's circumstances. If somebody, if that seller has a house they have to buy, they might have a time frame that might not make that work. If they're not in a rush to buy something else, it could, as long as the terms are met, that could be a decent property. And when I have sellers and they come up with a contingent offer, I always say, let's check out what they're selling, because if it's a house that has, less likelihood to sell pretty quickly, maybe that's not what you take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point too, is, there may be a domino effect of, okay, my client who's selling a house and buying a house, and then these guys have to buy a house, but that's going to be contingent on them selling. You don't want to put too many dominoes in a row. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Paul had a bad experience with that one, so that's why I'm
Yeah.
Let's not get into that. I've been like this the whole time.
I've been staring.
That's why my lesson's between you.
I know. But that's something that you definitely want to educate your buyers and your sellers on, is we don't want too many dominoes, because just one not falling will mess the entire lineup.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point.
Yeah.
And you guys had something similar happen.
My personal house.
Yeah, double stacking contingencies.
With three
Contingencies.
Or more.
Yeah, it was a lot.
I think there was 4.
It was a weird time. It was when everyone was trying to it was during COVID and everyone was trying to move and sell. So I was selling my personal house, and the house I was buying was contingent upon my house selling. And then the people that were buying my house was contingent upon their selling. And I'm pretty sure the people buying their house too.
Wow.
Was
so
contingent.
You had
It was
4
It was a lot. Yeah.
in that transaction.
Yeah.
Contingent.
Finally we got a good buyer on the one. And then as soon as that one happened, they all closed almost immediately.
So the furthest down the line gets a solid buyer.
Yeah.
And then all the dominoes start falling. And you get to,
Yeah. Because everyone else, it was that last house that just kept falling through, and not through anybody's fault. But it took a while. It took, I think, 3 months to close it.
Yeah. And it's stressful for everybody involved in that because deals are falling apart through no fault of your own.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one thing that I did after that was I started putting down if I have a buyer that's in a contingent offer to buy something else and they're selling their house, I'll say, we can't take a contingent offer.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm the last one in the chain, I'm trying to make sure that that next one, if we have a contingent there, that there's a clause in our contract that says they can't take a contingent offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because then you get too many going on.
And that really is, I mean, it's a prudent point. It's a great point. I mean, in that instance, it worked out. Sounds like you had a whole bunch of flexibility with all the buyers and sellers.
Well, and I thought so. I was flexible. No, I think it was just everyone, the stress level was definitely high. And the last time we extended was the last time we were going to extend. So I think that kind of made everybody hustle a little bit and get it done, because it wasn't anybody's fault. It just kept happening. Everyone was doing the best that they could. So it worked out and was totally fine. And everyone got the house that they wanted. So it worked out, but it just took longer.
Yeah. Okay. Now
that's one of the big horror stories I have from contingencies.
Yeah. Contingency. And those can be.
But we're still friends.
Yeah. I mean, obviously. And that's why Melissa's between you.
Whoa. I thought I had a friend.
So that brings me to what the point I forgot earlier. How important is it when you're a listing agent and you receive an offer that's contingent upon the sale of their home, that you do two things: review what their home is that they're trying to sell. You alluded to that earlier, Paul, but also the agent or realtor representing them and maybe their track record, how successful they've been over the years. Anyone want to jump in on that and speak to how?
Well, I think that's very important. We actually had this experience a while back. We had a property that we got a second offer on, and they wanted to move on to the second offer. And the first people came in and said, wait, we just went under contract. But they went under contract with another contingency that wasn't on the market yet. It's so important as the person representing the property that's being sold, the initial property, that look at the circumstances, because not all contingencies are the same. I mean, you might have a slam dunk. You might look at that property and say, oh, they're going to list it at this. They've already got it on the market. It's been on 12 hours. I'm sure it already has multiple offers. This is not going to be an issue. Or you might look at it and say, they are just crazy. This is not.
They just bought it a year ago.
Right. This is not going to happen. Why are we going to tie up our customer with this? So that's where we can come in and really advise ourselves. Look at the whole situation, because every situation is going to be different.
I think another thing too is our level of professionalism with our peers. That really good communication with that other realtor. Is this a contingent sale? Is there anything that has to be done? We have to keep those lines of communication open, because we hear it all the time that, oh, well, they didn't even tell us that it was contingent upon another property. Some people are new and don't know, and that's okay, but we need to communicate with each other on that.
Find out everything you can, so you're making at least a good decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some people try to skirt the ethical lines. Like, okay, we're going to go ahead and submit this offer without a contingency, but we're going to put your home on the market. And if you can't get it sold, then at least you have your inspection contingencies. You can back out.
Yeah.
Maybe they try to steal a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that's really a rare occurrence, but on occasion it does happen. We've seen it happen over the years.
That's not the right thing to do.
And absolutely not. I can't reiterate to the people that are listening to this, the clients especially, like getting with a competent realtor that knows how to navigate these timeframes, these contingencies, the setup, to see the whole picture is absolutely invaluable. I mean, it could save you thousands and thousands of dollars. Really important. So let's talk a little bit about other contingencies, because when we talk about contingencies, all of us kind of go to buy-sell contingencies. But what other contingencies do we have in the purchase contract, and what should we be aware of? And is any contingency a valid contingency? Let's start there. Is any contingency a valid contingency if it's agreed to by the buyer and seller?
Yeah.
If it's
all
agreed,
valid.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So if Aunt Edna, I have a contingency that Aunt Edna from Kansas needs to come in and see this property by Wednesday of next week and agree that she likes it, and the buyer and seller agree on that, that is a valid contingency.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. Just want to make sure that's clear, because sometimes we've had questions on that before, which is surprising.
As long as it's in the contract.
Yeah.
You can't just a week after you're under contract say, my Aunt Edna didn't like the property, so I'm going to go ahead and terminate.
Yeah.
If that was not in there. But there's nothing wrong with that writing it in at the time and saying, I'm going to have to do X, Y, and Z before this works for me. Absolutely okay. I'm going to do some research on what it's going to cost to put the type of landscaping I want. I know it has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with the sale, you selling the house. But if that's what I need and the seller's okay with that, then absolutely it is.
Being forthright and upfront with those intentions and contingencies. I've seen a lot of, especially rural properties, where people say, I want to build a shop. I want to, house some horses, and I need to review, with the county or if there's any covenants, what's allowed there, because you would hate to be in the middle of that and not have built in a contingency and realize you can't have any horses. We have seen that before. And we've seen instances where people wanted to add an additional home, and they buy the property and find out that they can't add an additional home based on a deed restriction or a covenant. We faced that before. I've got the scars to prove it. So you have to build those contingencies. And what about some of the other contingencies? What are some normal contingencies, Paul?
I think the big three in our purchase agreements here in New Mexico are inspections, appraisal, and financing. We always put some time frames in for the home inspections, and then that's kind of the first out, we call it. Anything that comes up, like we used to see, it's too far for me to drive, or I don't like how muddy the road gets, or something like that. Those are those kind of contingencies, or the home inspection, and everything that goes along with that. If you can't come to terms on who repairs things or the condition of the home, you get out there. Appraisal is usually next. If the house doesn't appraise for the value and you can't figure out if the price comes down or the buyer has to come up with the difference. So that's another big one. Then the third one was financing. If for some reason the buyer loses their job, the loan does, they get denied the loan, they can, in our contract used to be the midnight the day before.
It's 3 days before.
3 days
Yeah.
before now,
Mm-hmm.
they can get out on that contingency.
And we've seen that happen.
One that I think is really interesting is our insurance contingency. In San Juan County, we don't, we're very blessed. We don't have a lot of natural disasters or anything here, but in other parts of the country, I know, I think it's in Florida, they've got, the hurricane insurance and
fire in Durango.
Fire in Durango. All of these different things that we don't necessarily have in San Juan County, but I'm sure you've heard insurance companies are really tightening down, and it's getting harder and harder to issue those policies in certain parts of the country. So I'm glad that we have it, because you never know. It could be, the insurance won't create a policy due to the roof condition or something, but it's very important to have that contingency as well, especially if you're getting financing, because if it can't be insured, you can't get the loan.
Well, we've had just a compound on that for insurance. Up La Plata Highway, there's a lot of fire department doesn't have enough fire hydrants, or there's certain areas where the trucks can't turn around, so you have to have fire suppression systems. So that's a big part of the insurance contingency.
Yeah, the time that it takes for them to get to your property.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a great point. And insurance companies are wising up, and they're cracking down.
They are.
We do also have floodplains to deal with.
Yes.
And so, if you're, depending on what side of the river you are, if you're on the bank that's higher, then it's going to flood out the other side of the bank. You're usually in a good spot. But even then, you may have to get an elevation certificate, which requires a surveyor to go out and shoot it from both sides of the river, and then file a formal document removing you from the floodplain. And you really can't be removed from the floodplain in the sense that you're in floodplain A, but you can be to the lowest degree of that.
Right. And those evolve, right? The FEMA floodplains, they evolve with nature,
you may not be in a floodplain when you purchase your house, but
you might be when you sell it.
Yeah, that's right. You might be a couple years down the line.
Yeah.
What are some of the other things we've seen from insurance companies that have tightened up? I've noticed that when homes are vacant, they get
they want to drop the insurance when they're vacant. They don't want to insure them vacant.
They don't want to insure them vacant. You mentioned the roof.
Age of the roof.
Yep. Also, if they've had multiple claims.
I had that one a few years back. I had a property that had 3 water damage claims on it. Really, they weren't very severe. I believe that the seller had some small issues, but kind of liked to just rely on insurance to take care of things. But when they went to sell it, the new buyer, they looked at the history and their insurance company said, no, they've had way too much water damage in this house. Well, they really hadn't, but they couldn't get insurance and they had to shop around quite a bit before they found somebody that would take it.
An escalated premium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. So let's move on to the speed round here. Oh,
No, it's good.
no, quite okay. So that's right. Well, let's move on to the speed round.
Sorry.
That's right.
Oh, wait, hold on. Before we do that,
Yes, yeah.
why is the contingency important? So if one of these things isn't met, then we can terminate and get the earnest money back.
Yes,
That
thank
is
you
what
for
I
that.
told
Thank
you.
you for
Yes.
rounding that
Yeah,
out.
sorry.
Yeah, we take for granted sometimes that we know these things like the back of our hand. We forget sometimes. It's like when I talk to my brother. He was in the Army for a lot of years, and then everything's an acronym. It's like the ABC department at the CDFG, and I'm like, I don't understand what any of that means.
Yeah.
We get caught up that in real estate as well. Sometimes we just assume people know. So thank you for
Yes.
rounding us out there, Melissa. So we're on to the speed round. Here's the question. Can a contingency offer hurt your ability to negotiate as a buyer? Shannon, I'm going to kick it off with you.
It could. It could. It doesn't mean it always does, but if you come in with your offer, even if you have a strong offer, I've seen offers as much as $30,000, $40,000 over asking price, but they have a contingency for sale. But if you've got a seller that has 3 competing offers that are maybe cash closing in the next couple of weeks, why would they take a chance on yours? I'm not saying they wouldn't. Sometimes the price is right. But a lot of times, yes, it could get in your way. It could get in your way, depending on the market. There are times where, every home we've had a contingency for sale, and they were quite a few months long, 6 months long, 3 months long. That's not the market we're in right now.
Understood. Aspen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're probably one of the biggest things that will affect your negotiating, aside from price. I think you have to come in really strong if you're going to put in a contingent offer and get chosen over other offers.
Yeah, especially in a hot market.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Same.
Melissa?
I mean, I don't have anything to add to the conversation. I agree 100%.
Mm-hmm. Paul?
Well, I would say contingencies are like hurdles. If you're like a track runner and they're a bunch of hurdles. So if you're looking at a 400-yard track and all of a sudden every 10 yards you have a hurdle, the seller is going to go, no, thank you, not at all. If you have 1 or 2, maybe that's fine. But if you put more and more and more contingencies, we already have a ton built into our agreement, our purchase agreement. So if you're not adding a bunch more, that's better for you.
Yep. And I would agree. Just to round out the conversation and the speed round, I do think contingency offers do put you at a disadvantage. However, with this caveat, I think it's super important that you have a very competent realtor on your side because they can help navigate and put the best foot forward without marginalizing your ability to negotiate the best that they can. And especially if I'm looking across the table at Paul and I've got the seller and he's got the buyer, and I know Paul's going to do a great job with that buyer, but also the property that buyer is selling. If you look at the whole picture, that matters. And so I just want to reiterate how important it is to have a competent realtor on your side helping you navigate and negotiate those things. So thank you for those, for that speed round and the final thoughts. Let's move into my favorite part of the podcast, and that is the Lyons Pride. We as group members of the Lyons Group, we like to go out into our community and make our community a better place. We give back in a variety of different ways, but we also like to highlight people that have done that as well and welcome them to the Pride. So Melissa, Glasgow, you have today's Pride.
Yes. So this is a really good friend of mine. Jennifer Shorthair works at the Farmington Police Dept as a civilian, and she volunteers her time as with Buckle Up New Mexico. She's Buckle Up New Mexico certified, and she just recently was awarded, I had to write it down because it's a lot of words, the Child Passenger Safety Technician Service Award for going above and beyond.
Wow.
So
Very nice.
She goes out into the community when they have these car seat fittings and will help people install their car seats correctly and safely. So I just think that's great. It's something that she does in addition to her job, and just keeping our kids safe in our community. So
Wow,
fantastic.
that's really cool. And I remember, I mean, back in the car seats, when I had the car seats for the girls, like it was like a friggin' maze. Like you got different things and you got to clip things in.
Yeah.
And,
Can't tighten that strap enough.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you're down there cranking and put your knee in the middle of the seat to crank it down. I mean, it certainly is a learning curve for a lot of people, especially those that may not, they may not be mechanically inclined, not that you really have to be, but or may not understand how something works. Jennifer Shorthair.
yes.
We see you at the Lyons Group, and we want to thank you for your work. Thank you for helping protect our kids, keeping them safe out there. Thank you for educating the community in that manner. And we just want to welcome you to the Lyons Pride. That was a great pick, Melissa. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So we're going to wrap this episode up. Next episode, you're going to want to stay tuned to this next one. It's going to be interesting. It's all about dual representation. Can you work with a realtor that's representing both sides, buyer and seller? We're going to dive into that a little bit, talk about dual representation, the ins, outs, things you should know as a client. And to wrap us up on this episode, Melissa, do you want to shed any more light on the Lyons
we
Group?
have available to you a buyer or seller guide or both available. And if you want to reach out to us, you can go to sjcbroker.com. We would love to set up a time, sit down and talk to you about our market and how we can best serve you, meet your goals. So we'd love to help you.
Yeah, and that consultation is fantastic that Melissa's talking about. Whether you're a buyer or seller, we can sit down and have a strategic consultation with you. We have these awesome guides, like
Yes.
you mentioned. We're happy to send them out to you. You can contact any of us at sjcbroker.com. Just go there and you can schedule your personal consultation with us at any time. Be sure to like and comment on the video if you want to see any other topics to be discussed. The real estate market is changing. We're going to have more information on that as it unfolds. So stay tuned for some episodes in that regard. But until then, thank you for joining us here at The Den. Thank you for listening to The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed on real estate happenings. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group, visit sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.